Jay Johnson and the Tigers land a power bat in the portal, and it's decision day for the number one wide receiver in the country. We're talking about it on a 4th of July edition of Locked on LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, and of course on YouTube. So smash that like button, subscribe up to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. We appreciate you for being there with us. Jay Johnson lands a power bat out of the portal. Who is next? We're going to take account of who LSU is targeting and who is still available. And it's decision day for 2 LSU football targets, including Decorian Moore, the number one wide receiver in the country. We're getting to all of that here today. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Let's begin with the good news for LSU baseball. And after yesterday's episode, I got so much feedback asking if it's time for LSU baseball to panic. And my answer flatly is no. There's still a long way to go for Jay Johnson to build this staff. And I can tell you the LSU coaching staff is crisscrossing the country, targeting every possible player and leaving no stone unturned to find the best roster to get LSU back to Omaha and to win a national championship. And we will talk when I have a time, maybe a day next week, to just run through what you lost and what you gained in the portal. That's probably going to be most appropriate when the roster is set. But I think when you actually spell it out, yes, LSU losing 13 players out of the portal, or 14 with Ryan Kucherek, it's a bit jarring to see that number. But when you look at actually the production LSU lost and what they brought in, I think they're actually going to be better off. More on that when we can get there. But the good news for LSU is that on Wednesday evening, Dalton Beck committed to LSU. Now, you may not know the name Dalton Beck, and that's fine. That's why I'm here, to tell you everything you need to know. So it is very easy to see what Jay Johnson and his staff are doing. They are trying to recruit power back into this lineup. Remember, Jared Jones and his 28 homers, everyone is expecting is going to be drafted and signed. Tommy White and his 24 homers are headed to the first round. Hayden Travinsky was your third leading home run hitter with 16. He's out of eligibility. Brady Neal had 9 homers. He's now at Alabama. Mac Bingham had 8 homers. He's out of eligibility. So your top home run hitters are all gone from this year's team. The leading returning home run hitter you have is Steven Milam with 8. So you desperately, as a matter of fact, all of your returning home runs don't even total. They're total 27, whereas Jared Jones had 28. So all of your returning home runs combined aren't as much as what Jared Jones had. So the charge for Jay Johnson and this staff was go find power bats in the portal. And Dalton Beck checks that box. So Dalton Beck, I'll run you through his career because he's been at 3 schools in 3 years. He started at Grayson College in Texas, and he's he's a two-way guy, left-handed pitcher and a left-handed bat, a DH. Well, as a freshman at Grayson College, he made 12 appearances with a 4.33 ERA, but offensively is where he made hay. Had a 380 batting average with 9 homers as a freshman. So naturally, big schools took notice. He transfers to Kansas State. Well, they try to use him as a pitcher, and he had only 3 appearances on the season with a 14.29 ERA. Again, he only had 3 appearances on the year and did not have an at-bat. I mean, a guy who had 380 with 9 homers, and you didn't even give him an at-bat. But after his year at Kansas State, he transferred to Incarnate Word, where he spent the 2024 season. And he had 3 appearances on the mound early in the season, but he was also DHing. And I think it was very clear early on that his impact was going to be at the plate and not on the mound. So, look, he threw 8 1/3 innings in those 3 appearances, but he ended up leading the Southland Conference in slugging percentage. As a matter of fact, Dalton Beck led his team this year in darn near every offensive category. So you're talking about a guy that was a super effective offensive player. 377, 18 homers. I mentioned he led the Southland in slugging. LSU needs power, and it's pretty clear that they've added it. Run through what LSU has already added in the portal. Luis Hernandez from Indiana State, 23 homers. Here's Dalton Beck from Incarnate Word, 18 homers. Eddie Yaman from Dayton, 13 homers. You've got other big bats like Blaze Priester coming in from the JUCO level. So LSU has done what they needed to do, which was add power bats, guys that could change the scoreboard with one swing, doubles off the wall and homers, and Dalton Beck certainly qualifies. So this is a guy that is not going to pitch for you. He is a lefty and he has pitched, but I do not think this is something where LSU is going to try to make him into a pitcher. I think this is a guy who is likely stepping in to see if he could be your DH, and it's another left-handed bat. Of course, Jay Johnson loves left-handed bats. So you've added another one here and another opportunity to get a big power bat in the lineup. So with the addition of Dalton Beck, that puts LSU at 31 players on the roster. Now we're going to see what happens with the draft. So you could end up with more. Like, Michael Braswell would be interesting. We'll see what happens with Jared Jones. We'll see what happens with Griffin Herring. Guys that are sort of borderline. But you're at or just over 30 roster spots, 30, 31 right there. So there's more additions coming for LSU. Maybe you end up landing guys in this signing class, high school players that maybe you're not thinking you're going to get to campus. Maybe you lose guys you think you are going to get to campus. So the bottom line is you have to oversign in these situations because the draft is so unpredictable. Like Luis Hernandez, you bring him in from Indiana State. He had 23 homers last year. Well, he's a draftable prospect. Dalton Beck, who you got committed on Wednesday night, he's a draftable prospect. So there's a chance that a team could pluck him away. And if they give him a sizable offer, he could sign and never show up at LSU. But this is a heck of a fallback if that's the way that Dalton Beck may be looking at it. So I know that there's a lot of LSU fans that are looking at just the number of defections. And it's concerning, and I do understand that. But I think you also have to look and say, okay, well, you lost all those power bats. Look at what you've added now in power bats. Yes, you still have to address your infield. You need to address third base, and you certainly need to see. Well, we're going to see what happens with Michael Braswell, and there's other targets. By the way, we are going to get into those other targets. I'm going to break down everything I know about Caden Kent and Gavin Keelan. Gavin Keelan. I've been mispronouncing it. Wyatt Hensler, Andrew Fisher, all those names I'm going to get to here in just a quick second. So, who else they might be targeting behind the plate at this point? It's I look at what LSU has lost, and it just keeps coming back to me that what they've lost are role players, guys that hadn't played, and you're replacing them with guys that have played a bunch. So, Reeves is a guy in the JUCO ranks who signed with LSU, who of course also is a draft possibility. But if he shows up on campus, he's a real athletic guy that could play anywhere on your infield. So that's another guy who could be a starter for you. So it's going to materialize. And the question really is, do you trust Jay Johnson, his ability to recruit and identify talent and get him on campus? I do. And that's why I think LSU is going to be just fine. But we will wait and see how it all transpires. But Dalton Beck is the newest member of the LSU class for 2025, transferring in from Incarnate Word. But we'll wait and see what happens with the draft. Okay, I mentioned all the players of who might be next, the targets for LSU that remain in the portal. I want to break those down for you. And also, it's decision day for two big-time prospects, defensive tackle Zion Williams out of Lufkin, Texas, and the number one receiver in the country, one-time LSU commit to Corian Moore. We're going to get to that as we continue. We're glad you're with us here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. So pleased every day to tell you about Game Time, proud partner of ours here on Locked On LSU. Download that Game Time app, y'all. The summer months are here. It's just an awesome time to get out to a ball game. If you love Major League Baseball like I do, no matter who your favorite team is, you got to discover Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Remember, use the code Locked On College, one word altogether, Locked On College, and get $20 off your first purchase. One of the things I love so much about Game Time is the real-time pricing and the price changes. So, for example, on the 4th of July, the Yankees are at home to wrap up their series against the Reds. It's a matinee. You can get tickets on Game Time for as low as $8. You heard me right, $8. I don't know, maybe you love the Houston Astros. Maybe you're near Houston. A lot of our audience are big Astros fans just because of the proximity. Well, the Astros play on the 4th of July. It's a matinee. They're in Toronto, but the next time they're at home is on the 9th. So next Tuesday at home against Miami. Tickets as low as $13. You can buy them right there. You can get actual views from every seat where tickets are available. So you can see pictures of the actual view, not like a 3D mock-up. I mean, it is a photograph from the view of your seat there at Game Time. So download the Game Time app. They are an official partner of Major League Baseball, the official authorized, ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. So download the Game Time app. Go ahead, create an account, and use the code Locked On College, one word, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply at Game Time. So LSU has added Dalton Beck, and they've had a very healthy recruiting class out of the portal as of now. So the big question now is who is next. So let's run through a handful of names that I want to update you on, because I know these are the names that I get asked about most commonly. First is Caden Kent, and we have an answer there. So Caden Kent is staying at Texas A&M. Caden Kent, of course, is Jeff Kent's son. We went through this. He batted .416 in the College World Series, but he's a guy that when Jim Schlossnagle left, Caden Kent entered the portal. As I was told and told you here, he was maybe none too thrilled with Jim Schlossnagle, who benched him. Gavin Grohovac started at third base and became the SEC Freshman of the Year. But it wasn't until later in the season that Caden Kent re-emerged sort of in the postseason, of course, coinciding in Omaha with Braden Montgomery's injury as they sort of shook up the lineup a bit. But Caden Kent certainly proved he was able. Hit over 300 this season, hit .416 in Omaha. But he's staying at Texas A&M. I'm told that Michael Early was able to guarantee him that he would be in the everyday lineup. So when I look at Texas A&M, what they've been able to do in keeping Jace Laviolette and keeping Gavin Grohovac and keeping Caden Kent, these are micro short-term wins for Texas A&M and for Michael Early. When Texas A&M made the decision to hire Michael Early, and we go back and listen to the show that we did whenever he was hired, or even the day Jim Schlossnagle left, we told you about those players entering the portal, and guys like Laviolette were going to follow Michael Early because of that relationship. We told you this a week ago. So this isn't something that's we're plucked from the air right now. But these are short-term micro wins for Texas A&M. In hiring Early, the goal was keep this talented roster together. And they've been able to do that. And now they've added a Jason Kelly, obviously, and a guy that was a sitting Power 5 head coach to try to help Michael Early along the process. They were on the same coaching staff at Arizona State together, so they know each other. But will Michael Early be able to maintain the talent level, be able to maintain the wins, the status of that program, which had slipped under Rob Childress, that Jim Schlossnagle was able to bring back up with the help of NIL? And listen, these A&M boosters are loading up the coffers, and they're doing what they have to do to try to win. Is Michael Early the guy to get them there? Don't know. But he was the guy to keep this roster together, and he's done that. So Caden Kent is off the board. Gavin Keelan, we've talked about since the portal opened. We've talked about him for a month now. A shortstop from Louisville. He is a top 10 prospect in the 2025 draft. He would be the crown jewel of anybody's transfer portal class if they're able to get him. I've told you the backstory there. He visited Vanderbilt. He visited Tennessee during their regional. He visited LSU and left without a commitment, was waiting for Texas A&M to finish their College World Series run. And, of course, we know a day after their College World Series run ended, Jim Schlossnagle was gone. So that's kind of left things up in the air a little bit for Keelan. Does he go visit Texas? Does he still visit Texas A&M? Is A&M off the board now? I think, does he wait until the draft to see what roster looks the best and what team maybe is most desperate or most willing to pay, or whatever the case may be, until after the draft? We're getting closer to the draft, and we're less than 2 weeks away now from the start of the draft. So maybe it's one of those situations where he waits and gathers more information, but Gavin Keelan is still another big fish that's out there. We've told you about Wyatt Hensler. Wyatt Hensler was an all Ivy League third baseman at UPenn, Pennsylvania, and is an A&M commit. He's a guy that played third and hit 22 homers this year for Penn. So you want to talk about another big power bat in the lineup? That would qualify. 4-year starter in the Ivy League. Remember, the Ivy League doesn't allow fifth years, so he's got to go play somewhere else his final year. He's an A&M commit, but with Jim Schlossnagle leaving for Texas, he then took a visit to LSU last weekend after all the hullabaloo around Texas A&M and Texas with Schlossnagle leaving. So Hensler is a guy that LSU is still targeting and could land with the Tigers. Andrew Fisher is another one that I've been asked about a bit. So Andrew Fisher was the starting third baseman at Ole Miss this year, started 49 games. He was their everyday third baseman, and he was their best offensive player. Fisher led Ole Miss in hits, RBI, triples, total bases, and homers. Had 20 homers. Again, you get the theme here with the power bats. Jay Johnson loves offense. He needs power. He's recruiting all dudes that have hit in the upper teens and the 20s in homers. Well, and Fisher is a top 100 prospect for 2025. Now, he has not decided or announced where he's going, but I'm told that Tennessee opened up their NIL coffers for Fisher and Doyle, the left-handed pitcher from Ole Miss. I'm told they're really good friends, maybe roommates even, and that they're both going to Knoxville. That's at least the expectation, but I do want to clarify, because I always feel like I have to throw out this qualifier. It is never done until it's done with these things, just like in coaching searches. Like Caden Kent, as soon as he hit the portal, LSU was his chief target. And then A&M hired Michael Early. He was able to stay put. They gave him a big NIL number. He was promised playing time, and he decided to stay in College Station. So I'm just giving you the latest info as I have it. And the latest info I have is that Fisher, the Ole Miss third baseman, is headed to Rocky Top with the left-handed pitcher Doyle as well to go play for Tennessee next year. We also learned that Max Coffer, a Texas A&M reserve catcher who started as a freshman, was benched this year, jumped in the portal after Schlossnagle left. Max Coffer's committed to Pulmonary at South Carolina. That was an LSU target. I want to remind you, LSU feels good with their starting catcher. They've got Blaze Priester coming in from the JUCO ranks, and he's an upgrade both defensively and offensively. He's a power bat who can hit for average, and he gives you an upgrade from Brady Neal in every way defensively. Cade Arambidi is one of the top high school prospects in this entire draft out of the Houston area, and he was a guy that everybody thought was going to be a high school signee straight to the draft, but struggled a bit with the bat in his senior year. Has seen his star dim just a smidge, maybe a third, fourth round guy now, who it looks like he's leaning toward coming to school. But again, you never know until the draft plays out. But if you have Priester, Arambidi, you're great there. You need some depth, though. You need a third catcher. And so with Max Coffer now off the board, LSU's target very likely becomes a guy we've already mentioned here, who's Bear Harrison from St. Mary's. He was all conference this last year at St. Mary's as a freshman, where he started at catcher and hit over 300. So Bear Harrison is the name to watch behind the plate, and I would expect LSU to be very involved there with Harrison, and quite possibly even the front runner to land Bear Harrison. So again, as we run through the numbers, just keep in mind what we're looking at here, right? You know, you've still got about 10 roster spots to play with. So, you know, is it guys from the high school ranks that end up showing on campus that you're not thinking of? I'll tell you, I've had scouts tell me, as crazy as this is going to sound, that with William Schmidt looking like an end of round one guy, it may actually be a wild card, and he may end up on LSU's campus. And if he does, you're doing backflips, because you got the best right-handed high school pitcher in the draft coming to campus. I don't know that I necessarily believe that's going to happen, but crazy things happen in the draft. The only thing I'm going to tell you is I believe that if you go 1-1, and we're going to do this on the show coming up, 1-1, who LSU lost, who they've gained, you've upgraded. If, for example, you lose Aiden Moffitt, tall, big, strong arm right hand back into the bullpen guy. Well, you sign Chandler Dorsey, tall, strong arm back into the bullpen guy who's a 2-year closer at South Florida who had 26 appearances last year and 8 saves. Well, one guy is an experienced college pitcher who throws 98 from the right side. The other has a lot of potential. So while it stinks to lose Moffitt, you got a more veteran guy who's done it at the collegiate level. And I think there's a lot of examples like that. And again, I'm not going to fully grade this class until I know what the roster looks like. And they're still a ways away from finishing off this roster. And we will have a much better idea in a couple of weeks after the draft. But a couple of players in the portal currently to keep an eye on. Caden Kent staying at A&M. Gavin Keelan, still waiting to see what happens there. Wyatt Hensler, A&M commit. Could LSU flip him? Possibly, especially with Caden Kent and Grohovac staying in College Station now. Andrew Fisher, I'm told, is headed to Tennessee. Max Coffer is committed to South Carolina. Keep an eye on Bear Harrison from St. Mary's, big-time LSU target there behind the dish. So as we have more, we'll tell you more. Speaking of commitments, it is the 4th of July, and it is decision day for 2 massive prospects. We'll give you a little preview of it as we continue here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. Zion Williams and DeCorian Moore are set to make their announcements. I got some thoughts, but as always, if you're watching Fox Sports ESPN on TV all day and you got to turn the volume down because of all the screaming, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. I think we can all empathize. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it is decision day for 2 LSU targets. Let's start with the guy who we think is going to give LSU good news today, and that's Zion Williams. So if you're not familiar, Zion Williams is a big 4-star interior defensive tackle out of Lufkin, Texas. 6'3.5", 330, a 4-star, and a guy that, as he plays out his senior season, you're probably going to expect that star to continue rising. Now, he was thought to be a Texas lean because he was being recruited to Texas by Bo Davis. Well, when LSU hired Bo Davis away from Texas, Bo Davis continued recruiting a lot of the guys he was already recruiting to Austin and just saying, hey, come check out Baton Rouge. And Zion Williams, not Zion Williams' son, Zion Williams is a guy who very loyal to Bo Davis, and we all anticipate is going to pick the LSU Tigers here on the 4th of July. As a matter of fact, the On3 recruiting prediction machine gives LSU a 96.9% chance of landing Williams, TCU at 1.2%, and Texas at 1%. So pretty much the consensus belief here is that the defensive lineman, the 4-star defensive lineman out of Lufkin, Texas, is going to be an LSU Tiger, and he would become the first interior commitment for LSU in this class if the Tigers are, in fact, able to land him. Remember, LSU's got 12 commitments right now, 9 on the offensive side, just 3 on the defensive side. You know, the highest rated defensive player, Jesse Harold, the edge out of Florida, who committed a week ago. And then you've got a couple of linebackers committed as well. Keelan Moses, the in-state kid, and then Charles Ross. Forgive me, Charles Ross, actually, from On3, is the highest-rated prospect defensively, the number 88 overall prospect in the country, a linebacker out of the Houston area. So a couple of defensive Texas products we're expecting to be a part of this class. And then another player from the state of Texas that LSU is targeting is the number 1 wide receiver in the country, DeCorian Moore. Now, we all know the story here with DeCorian Moore. He's out of he's out of Duncanville. 5'11", 186, and he is by any measure the number 1 wide receiver in the country. He is consensus number 1 wide receiver. On3, 24/7, ESPN rivals all have DeCorian Moore as the number 1 wide receiver in the country. In the consensus rankings, he is the number 3 overall prospect, the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 player in Texas. So DeCorian Moore is a massive target at a position of need for LSU at receiver. And it's funny to say that, but keep in mind, you're losing Chris Hilton. You're going to lose Kyron Lacey. You're likely going to lose C.J. Daniels and Xavion Thomas, the 2 transfers. Who knows who else might transfer out. So this is a year where LSU is going to have to add numbers at the receiver spot. And you had DeCorian Moore committed. The interesting thing is that he's always largely been considered to be a Texas lean. Everyone thought he'd end up at Texas. The surprise was when he committed to LSU back in January. Now, just a few weeks back, he decommitted from LSU, but the Tigers did get back in the mix. They got Moore on campus for an official visit where he was the only visitor that weekend. They gave their 100% undivided attention to DeCorian Moore, but now it's decision day. Again, the consensus belief is that DeCorian Moore is going to choose the Texas Longhorns and stay in state. But was LSU able to make up ground with that official visit here in this last month or so? We'll find out with DeCorian Moore's decision on the 4th of July. And one more to tell you about is DJ Pickett. So DJ Pickett is a 5-star, and he is the consensus number 1 cornerback in the country. And DJ Pickett has set his announcement date. DJ Pickett will make his pledge on July the 17th. So that would be a super significant one for Corey Raymond. You know, DJ Pickett, this is the type of player that Corey Raymond came back to get back to LSU. 5-star, number 1, players in the country. Now, number 1 corners in the country. This is a tight race. He's choosing among LSU, Miami, Georgia, and Oregon. Now, there were some predictions from On3 that went in on Wednesday, for Oregon, but LSU is still the favorite to land DJ Pickett. The recruiting prediction machine over at On3 gives LSU a 27.9% chance, followed by Miami, Georgia, and Oregon in that order. He is the number 6 overall player in the country. He is the either the number 1 or number 2 cornerback in the country, depending on which service you subscribe to. Forgive me. On3, ESPN, and Rivals all have him as the number 1 corner. 24/7 has him as the number 3 corner. So actually, in the composite rankings, he's the number 2 cornerback. But 3 of the 4 services all rate him as the best cornerback in the country. 6'4", 179 pounds. Out of the state of Florida. So July 17th, we'll be at SEC Football Media Days when DJ Pickett makes his announcement. And if LSU is able to get DJ Pickett, and if they're able to get Jabari Antoine back in this class, then you should be doing backflips, because Corey Raymond will be doing exactly what we all thought he would be doing, which is sort of re-energizing and reigniting the flame at DBU. So a couple of big ones to keep an eye on there. It is the 4th of July, and we thank you for spending part of your 4th of July with us here. As always, whatever podcast app that you're finding us, please subscribe. Rate us, leave a review, let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We're here every day for Locked on LSU. And to all of you watching on YouTube, sincere thanks as well. Please smash that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Happy 4th of July. Hope you have a safe and wonderful 4th, celebrating with your family. If you have a long weekend, enjoy it. But we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here every single day for Locked on LSU. As we say, your team every day.